Be aware of the emotions that you are feeling and do not ignore them. If you are feeling something, and do not stay away from identifying them. Don't say you feel a type of way. What is that? Identify it. Are you anxious? Are you angry? Are you sad? Are you disappointed? What is it that you feel? Because when you identify it, then you know how to manage it.
Welcome to the Church Hurt Recovery Podcast with your host, Soneakqua J, where we'll walk through the question, what in the church happened to you? I am a licensed professional counselor in the states of Texas and Ohio, where I work with people dealing with anxiety, depression, and religious trauma, also known as church hurt. But this is not therapy. This is a podcast highlighting social and emotional learning skills and strategies that will help you manage your thoughts, feelings, emotions, decisions, and relationships as it pertains to everyday life, but specifically for the church. If you like what you're hearing, please give us a subscribe so that you never miss an episode. Grab your water and your journal and let's jump in.
Welcome back to the Church Hurt Recovery Podcast, where we walk through the question, what in the church happened to you? And then we highlight social and emotional learning skills and strategies to help you manage your thoughts, feelings, emotions, relationships, and decisions as it pertains to everyday life, but specifically as it pertains to the church. This is your host, Soneakqua J. And on this episode, I am going to tell you just a part of my church hurt story and some of the reasons why I am doing the work that I am doing and why I started this podcast. But before I get started, I do need to issue a trigger warning. What does that mean? Whenever I issue a trigger warning now and in the future, it is to let you know that something that I am going to say might trigger certain people for certain reasons. I am going to talk about trauma. I am going to talk about death. I am going to talk about anxiety. Okay, so if you have recently experienced a traumatic death or the death of a person who was close to you, or you struggle with anxiety, some of the things that I might talk about may trigger you. Okay, if you are triggered, stop the recording. You do not need to listen. Do something that relieves your anxiety. Take a walk. Do something physical like taking a walk, going swimming, sometimes even getting in the shower and grounding yourself will help. So again, there is a trigger warning that I am calling for this episode so that you might know that some things that I might say might trigger you. If you are being triggered, understand that triggers are an indication that there are some places that are unhealed that you need to work through. So if this is the time that you realize, okay, I need to seek some counseling or some type of professional help, please, please, please do that. Okay, here we go. So on July the 15th, 2012, my pastor finished his sermon and he walked out of the pulpit saying, I'm free. And he walked down the center aisle of the church, and before he got to the sound booth, he was gone. I heard him fall, but I did not know what that was at the time. I just heard the sound, and it was just the sound of a thud, okay? We found out later it was him, that he had passed out. The ambulance was coming. Got there. They said they had a pulse and that they were going to take him to the hospital. And so many of us, because we were all very, very close, we considered ourselves sisters and brothers. So all of us were going to go to the hospital to make sure he was okay before we went home. Now, this is right after church service. Okay, so we started to go. We got in the car, and as we're getting ready to pull off, I noticed that the ambulance is still sitting there. The Holy Spirit told me, he's gone. I did not want to believe that. But then he said, if someone is in an emergency situation, the ambulance doesn't just sit in the parking lot. Okay. So we went on to the hospital, but Holy Spirit had already warned me, right? So we get to the hospital. Everybody is there straight from church. So we are still dressed with heels and all your church attire. So one of my sisters says, well, let's go to the store and get the family some shoes, some slippers, so that they can be a little bit more comfortable. I did not want to go because Holy Spirit said, when you get back, he won't be here. I knew he was gone. And I didn't want to go as if me not going was going to keep him there. I knew he was gone. Holy Spirit had already told me. But I knew my sister, didn't want to go to the store by herself. She didn't want to be alone. So Holy Spirit said, go, but he won't be here when you get back. So I left. I went with her. We got the things, and as we're driving back to the hospital, we're coming into the roundabout where you come into the emergency, and I see my brother walking out of the doors. And just by the way he was walking, I knew that they had made the announcement that he was gone. He was, of course, but I already knew that. So I really didn't even have a reaction because I was kind of numb. But at the same time, I already knew. Holy Spirit told me twice that he was gone. That didn't make me feel any better, but actually I was a little bit more prepared. I was not hoping that he was there. I knew, okay? But even with the passing of my pastor, who was very much so like a father figure to me, that wasn't the end of it. That wasn't even the church hurt. Yes, that hurt, but that wasn't even the big deal. The big deal was a part of me not understanding myself or forcing myself to do things that I should not have done that hurt me deeper in this time that we're grieving. So the next thing that happened was the decision makers, the powers that be, replaced him immediately, which was very painful in and of itself. But being loyal or trying to be loyal, I went right back to church. In hindsight, I shouldn't have done that, but I did. So that first Sunday that I went, I was sitting in the sanctuary knowing that none of the people that were closest to me were going to be there. But out of loyalty, at least that's what I thought it was, I went. I was starting to have a panic attack without really realizing what was happening. I'm sitting there and the anxiety is starting. My heart is racing. It's like beating out of my chest. I literally feel like I'm running, but I'm sitting there. I'm trying to breathe because I'm not really sure why I would be experiencing anxiety. I've been in this church for 13 years. I don't have a problem being here. But what I didn't understand in that moment is that I had been traumatized by the way my pastor had left this earth. And I was trying to force myself to act normal when nothing was normal about this. Okay. I heard Holy Spirit again tell me, leave. But I didn't do it. I sat there trying to force myself to stay out of loyalty. And I think in some senses, out of not knowing what else to do, I go to church every Sunday. This is what I do. So I didn't know anything else in that moment. So I stayed, forcing myself to stay until I realized this is anxiety. You know, I knew as a therapist, I know what anxiety is, but to feel it yourself is something completely different. Finally, I realized this is anxiety. You have to go before you cause yourself harm. So I did. I finally left. I got to the car. I called my sister and I said, "What are you guys doing? Can I come over?" She was like, "Of course you can." So I went to the house. But even as I got to the house, I was in shock, or I was still in that place of anxiety that I could not bring myself out of. I don't even know what I looked like, but I must have looked bad enough for my sister to come over to me. She actually touched me and said to me, "You're okay. You're with us." And I snapped out of wherever I was. I didn't even know I was not present. There were people in the house, and I wasn't there with them until she touched me and said, "You're okay." She didn't ask me if I was okay. She said, "You're okay. You're with us." And I came out of wherever I was. That still wasn't the end of it. The decision makers were still making decisions. And with each decision that was made, things got worse and worse. There were quarrels over money. The church split. And I was still trying to figure out if I could stay until I saw this. Now, I don't typically look for things that are demonic. I just don't. I'd rather see good rather than evil. So, but when I saw this, there was a leader who was telling me about something that they wanted me to participate in. And I was all on board because it was all about mental health. So anything about mental health, I am there. So they were telling me about this thing that they wanted to put in place and that they wanted me to lead, to spearhead, to head up. But then I saw something in their face. On the outside, they were smiling, but behind their face, there was a smirk. Y'all, when I say this was demonic, it was insidious, it was scary. And I knew then that I had to leave. I'm like, "Holy Spirit, you don't have to show me anything else. You don't have to tell me twice. I saw it. Thank you. I'm out." I told them to remove everything in that part of the ministry that I was a part of. Take my name off of everything that you're doing, and I will be leaving this church. I did it in what I felt like was the right way. I told them that I was leaving. I didn't give them all the details as of why, like how do you tell the leader or a leader. I saw demonic, something demonic happening behind your face in your eyes. But I knew that I could not stay there. Okay. And so I left. Things got a little bit worse for me when it came to anxiety. I was still able to function perfectly. I was still seeing my clients. I was still doing everything as usual. But I'd have these moments where the anxiety was really, really strong and severe, to the point where I thought, if this continues, I'm going to have to go to therapy. I'm not going to be able to handle this on my own. But let me tell you what I did. This is one of the reasons why I am walking you through the social and emotional learning process, because I used it during this time frame. Okay. So as I started working through this, I scaled it. Remember your SEL scale, your social and emotional learning scale is A, self-awareness, B, self-management, C, social awareness, D, relationship skills, E, responsible decision making. Okay. So my self-awareness was to realize you are battling anxiety right now over all of this, along with the grieving process. I was expecting the grieving process. I was not expecting the trauma and the anxiety that I was experiencing. So I was actually caught off guard. Even though I know as a therapist the signs and symptoms to look for when it is about you, you may miss it. Okay. And I did. But I realized, hey, self awareness, you are battling with anxiety. Then we moved on to self management. Okay, so now that I know that this is anxiety, what am I going to do about it? Do I need to go to therapy, or can I manage this in a different way on my own? And I wasn't opposed to going to therapy, even as a therapist. I will go if I need to. But I was able to get a handle on it because it started with the self awareness and I stopped denying what I was experiencing. Self management. Okay, now what am I going to do about this? I asked Holy Spirit, what is going on with me and what am I supposed to do about this? Holy Spirit told me to stop trying to be by yourself because I'm typically a loner. I can do fine by myself, but he told me to stop trying to be by myself and stop trying to do this on my own. So in order for me to manage this anxiety without having more issues, I needed to follow what Holy Spirit was saying because he was helping me manage myself. I wasn't even needing to do this on my own. Okay. But it also flowed into social awareness and relationship skills because I had people in my life that I could count on, that I could be around. They didn't have a problem with me being around. They actually liked me being around. Okay. So the social awareness for me was to realize, hey, there are people that you need to be around. They're okay with you being around, and it may be that they need you around as well. So get in your social environment so that you are safe and so that you can process and so that you can heal. You're not going to be able to do this by yourself. The relationships that I had built in this church, even though now these people that I'm talking about are still my brothers and sisters to this day, and many of us still don't go to that church, but we are still family. And these are the people that I am talking about. I had built relationships. Our pastor had made sure that we had built relationships with one another, that we were actually felt like we were family. We still do. We are. Okay. So I had the relationships that I needed so that I could be around the people and get the support that I needed to help me with this. And when I was around them, the anxiety was not there. And when I was away from them, I was able to manage the anxiety a whole lot better because I knew the support that I had. Okay. And so the last one that was social awareness and relationship skills combined into one. Okay. And so the last one, responsible decision making. On my part, the responsible decision was obeying Holy Spirit, not ignoring him like I had done when my pastor was passed away, and like I had done when I was trying to force myself to stay in the church. When I was disobeying Holy Spirit, I was hurting myself. Okay, so this time I was going to make a responsible decision to obey Holy Spirit, to be around the people that I needed to be around, and not to try to manage this by myself, and not to try to do things independently as I do often. Okay, so I want you to understand that once you learn this scale, once you learn it to where you can rattle this thing off without a problem, you will also know how to manage your thinking, your feeling, your emotions, your decision making, your relationships very, very well. And if or when you should get to the point where you are not managing well, then you probably know that this is a time where you need to reach out for professional help, more than likely, because often we will do well. We will engage our coping mechanisms. We will do all of the things. And then because we're doing well, we stop doing the things. When I counsel with clients, I try and make sure I tell them, you're going to get better. But when you do, you have to have the skills, the tools, and the strategies in place, and you must continue to engage them on a regular basis, even when you're doing well, so you can stay in a place of doing well. The people that I see go back and forth in and out of deep struggle. Now, it's not that we'll never have anything to struggle, any kind of struggle, because we know that this world is going to bring problems. Even the Bible tells us that we're going to have tribulation. So this is not to say that we're never going to struggle with anything. But what I want you to learn from this podcast is how to put things in place so that you lessen your struggle and you lessen the amount of time that you're going to be in the struggle because you have the things in place that you need. Okay? Always remember, you start with your self-awareness. Be aware of the emotions that you are feeling and do not ignore them. If you are feeling something, and do not stay away from identifying them. Don't say you feel a type of way. What is that? Identify it. Are you anxious? Are you angry? Are you sad? Are you disappointed? What is it that you feel? Because when you identify it, then you know how to manage it. You don't know how to manage a type of way. That's not something you manage. Okay? Don't do that to yourself. Okay, so learn these skills and strategies. Learn the SEL skill that I am teaching you. You can also go to Casel, CASEL.org, and learn some different strategies that are in the social and emotional learning tool belt that they have there for you. I teach this with an element of faith because I am a person of faith. You will not get the faith-based elements from just the general components of SEL. But here we are combining faith-based elements to SEL. Okay? So I want you to know that nothing that you experience in a church situation or an event or a series of events should stop you from loving Jesus, because nothing that happened to me stopped me from loving Jesus. I still love Jesus. I still love the church. And that is what I want from you. So if you like what you're hearing on this podcast, remember to subscribe. You can also subscribe in two different areas. For now, you can subscribe on Spotify and you can subscribe on my YouTube channel. So I hope that you enjoyed what you're listening to. Remember, if anything that I said to you today triggered you, seek help. This podcast does not replace professional help. If you need counseling, seek it out. It is available. I will see you on the next episode. And until then, be proactive about your mental health. Be well, and God bless. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Church Hurt Recovery Podcast. I hope you've learned something. And if you did, please remember to subscribe. Also, remember that this podcast is for educational purposes only. It does not take the place of therapy. So if you need professional assistance, please seek that out. Until we meet again, be proactive about your mental health, be well, and God bless.